As one of the most influential individuals in Nebraska, Governor Pete Ricketts and I sat down and we decided to talk about Nebraska agriculture. We dove into some of the specifics and some of the hardest things that Nebraska's ag families are going through right now.
All right.
Governor Ricketts, Kellen Avikin.
Kellen, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I'm great. Governor, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk about something that's very prevalent in our state, agriculture. So first off, what are some of the state, and as you see it, what's the state of agriculture in our state?
My pleasure, Kellen. Well, Nebraska is an agricultural state. It's our largest industry. It's the heart and soul of what we do. And if we're going to grow Nebraska, we have to grow agriculture. And right now, we've certainly seen commodity prices being depressed. Farm income has been cut in half since about 2013, so we've definitely got some challenges in our agricultural sector. But we also have some great opportunities. So one of the things that we have to do to be able to grow agriculture is to expand international trade. And last year, President Trump opened up China to our U.S. beef, and that's a big deal for us. In fact, Nebraska right now accounts for over half of all the U.S. beef that is going to China. And if we can achieve the same market share in China that we've got right now in Japan, it means about $200 million in sales just for Nebraska. So that's a big deal. Last year, Argentina opened up their market to pork. Pork is an expanding part of our economy as well, so that's a big deal. Vietnam opened up their market to dried distillers grains. Japan is set to open up their market for U.S. ethanol. So all these represent opportunities for us to be able to expand our markets so that we can grow our value-added products and be able to grow our economy from that standpoint.
What are other ways on a global stage that you envision the state being able to grow their footprint in agriculture, not only in the United States, but probably more importantly, as you talked about just a moment ago about China?
Well, we've got to expand our marketplace around the world. 96% of the world's consumers lie outside our borders. We certainly produce way more food than we can consume here, so we need to be able to go out there. And again, there's a great long-term opportunity for us because by 2050, there'll be over 2 billion more people on the face of the earth. That means we're going to have to double the food supply, 100% more. 70% of that will have to come from productivity and innovation. Well, we've got the most productive, innovative farmers and ranchers in the world right here in Nebraska, so that's a great opportunity for us. Now, one of the other things we have to do besides expanding international trade is expanding value-added agriculture. So taking the products that we have and somehow processing them. Livestock is a great example of that. We talked about expanding beef. We talked about our expanding pork. Poultry is another example of how we can expand value-added agriculture here. And in fact, last year we were able to get the investment from Costco and Lincoln Premium Poultry to create a poultry processing facility in Fremont, and that will add 800 jobs. But just as importantly, will create the opportunity for about 125 farmers to put up poultry barns, and that will allow them to diversify their revenue stream, be able to attract young people into the business, and help them build equity. And that facility, that Costco facility, will use the equivalent of about 2,000 acres of corn every week, about 360,000 bushels of corn, plus an additional 3,000 metric tons of soybean meal. And that will help out local farmers, the farmers that are within, 1,600-mile radius with their basis. So that's another great way that, again, we can process the commodities we grow and turn them into something that's more value-added, like poultry, and be able to create jobs and expand our economy. And that's just one example of value-added agriculture. We talked about livestock. Ethanol is another great example. We've got investments from companies like Novozymes that are in that industry. Evonik is another example of taking our agricultural products and adding value. So these are all things we want to encourage as those companies that are going to come and invest in our state and create value-added agriculture.
You talked about the Fremont, the plant that's coming to Fremont, and the 1,600-mile radius. Well, we know that.
Yeah, not 60.
Say approximately.
60 to 100 miles.
There we go. That's equivalent. It's all rooted within family farms, and what they produce is 6% of the U.S. total, over $20 billion as well. How do you give farmers relief? There's no disguising that agriculture is really tough now, and you could date this last couple of years' trend to 2008. What are some of the state's plans to provide relief for family farmers in the state?
Yeah, so we talked about one, which is international trade. The second is value-added agriculture. The third thing we have to do has to do with property tax relief. Farmers and ranchers have seen the value of ag land over the last 10 years go up 252%. Quick math on that, 25% a year. Property taxes paid on ag land have gone up $162 million, or about 16% a year. So what we need to do is focus on how can we deliver property tax relief to our farmers and ranchers. Now, it's one of the things I've been focused on every year I've been governor. My first year, we controlled spending. We cut the growth of government nearly in half, and that allowed us to increase the property tax credit relief fund by over 45%. And that's direct relief from the state to all property owners in the state. My second year, we worked on two bills, LB 958 and 959, and we don't need to go into the details of those right now, but what that was about is trying to bring some expense control at the local level, because the state doesn't collect property taxes. It's your school board, your county, your city, your NRD. Those are the ones who collect property taxes. So those bills were about trying to encourage fiscal restraint. And then last year we had a very comprehensive bill that was stalled in legislative debate. It was filibustered. So this year, Senator Smith and I have worked on LB 947, which really focuses on how do we bring about that property tax relief and bring in income tax relief and workforce development, because we only have about 19 rural senators. So we have to actually create a broad coalition to get to the 33 votes to overcome a filibuster. And so that needs to have a broader thing, or a broader package than just property tax relief, and that's what part of our goal is, to build that coalition, build that consensus to get a bill to my desk.
Describe the balancing act is, I think, the best way to probably term, because another big part of getting youth involved in agriculture is ag education, not only with the universities in this state, but with the public education. Describe how hard is it as a balancing act to go with property taxes, ag education, and then just the economic issues that farmers in the state are facing right now?
Well, again, there's not going to be a single silver bullet that answers all our problems on how we grow agriculture. And you hit upon some of the key themes, and we talked about some of the major approaches we have. But when it comes to how do we get the word out, we have to really think about educating everybody in our state, especially people in Lincoln and Omaha, about where food comes from. We got some great programs that help engage young people, whether it's 4-H or FFA. We want to continue to see those expand, and they are here in our state. We're doing very, very well along those lines. And in fact, for example, 4-H is expanding in Omaha, creating programs there to help educate those city kids about the opportunities for careers in agriculture, because it's not just production agriculture. There's a lot of careers that involve technology, computer programming, the biosciences, sales. I mean, there's just so many things you can involve with agriculture. In fact, USDA has said that we will need to produce about there'll be about 53,000 jobs that are open right now in agriculture, and will be for the next few years. But our ag colleges are only turning out about 33,000 graduates. So we've got lots of opportunities for young people to get involved in the field. And just again, when we're talking about things like property tax relief, if you are going into production agriculture, that's an important thing to help that young farmer or rancher get in. That if our high property taxes are a barrier and prevents them from investing in innovation. So again, all the more reason why we need to be able to pass property tax relief this year.
And what's the consequence of lowering a property tax in this state then? If that's obviously a goal for everyone, but what would be the consequence?
Well, part of it will be to help make our farmers and ranchers be more competitive. So right now, if you look at our surrounding states, our farmers and ranchers are paying 2, 3, 4 times as much property taxes per acre as their counterparts in South Dakota, Kansas, Iowa. And so we're being put at a competitive disadvantage. In fact, I've had farmers tell me they're selling their land here and moving to Missouri because the difference in property taxes is enough to make them profitable. So if we want to continue to have young people come into agriculture, we've got to make an environment where we're competitive in that marketplace. So we've got to have our farmers and ranchers be able to make a living if we want to continue to see that grow. So that's why it's so important that we create property tax relief to help make sure that we have a strong ag industry here in the state that's known for agriculture.
What's that like for you as the governor of the state of Nebraska to hear Nebraska-grown families having to move to try to support their families? How much?
Oh, that's terrible to hear someone come to me. In fact, at one of my events last fall, a farmer came up to me and said, "Hey, Governor, love what you've been trying to do for us and love the work you're doing, but just want you to know I'm not coming to any more of your events." I'm like, "What's the matter?" He's like, "I sold my farm here and I bought one in Missouri, so I'm moving out of Missouri." Well, that kills me when I hear that. We want to help make sure our farmers and ranchers are successful. And that's why, again, in my administration, we've worked so hard on property tax relief and opening up those international trade opportunities and focusing on value-added agriculture as ways to make our farmers and ranchers more competitive.
At the beginning of March, you had the Governor's Ag Conference out in Kearney. Talk about what the goals of our ag conferences that you put on throughout the state every year.
So our Ag Conference is a great opportunity for people to come together from all across the state and learn about what are the current trends in agriculture, hear about new ideas, but probably most importantly, get a chance to network with producers from across the state and share best practices, hear about what's going on in the industry, and really help form those relationships that will help them work together to address the issues that we need to address to be able to grow agriculture in our state. And it's obviously been very successful because it was our 30th anniversary, so we've been doing this for a while now. And it's just, again, a great chance for producers to come together and really help us figure out the strategies to grow Nebraska agriculture.
You touched on a little bit ago about youth returning to the farm. Nationally, youth is on the decline. Ironically, though, in Nebraska, since 2012, Nebraska is the only state that has an uptick in those numbers. Even with those upticks, it's still extremely hard to get in. You talked about high property taxes, high land value, and there's so much high input costs right away for young farmers coming out of college and producers that are just wanting to get into it. Does the state have any incentives that you're trying to help put forward to make it easier to get those numbers to continue to climb?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, again, why property tax relief is so important, because that will help bring small farmers and ranchers, or our younger farmers and ranchers, into the industry. We also have other opportunities for property tax relief if you're a young farmer or rancher. And then there's other programs that we administer, but there are federal programs, things like the 100 Beef Cow program or the 100 Acre program, that are also benefits to young farmers who are looking to get into the industry. So there's a number of programs out there, and I'd encourage anybody who's looking to get involved in the industry to be able to do that. But probably the best advice I could give, say, a young farmer who wants to get into the industry is, if you're not coming from a family farm that you know, for example, is going to be passed down to you from the next generation, develop those networks, develop those relationships with other folks to find those opportunities where you can take over for somebody else, because it is going to take a while. Agriculture is a very capital-intensive industry or business. And when you're talking about the land, you're talking about the machinery, so it takes time to step into that. So develop those relationships early and start getting into it so that you have the ability to be able to achieve your dream of owning your own farm.
So we've covered a lot. We've talked about how Nebraska can be globally known as a very prominent agricultural state. We've talked about some of the issues of high input costs and property taxes. In your eyes, how can you see this ag industry rebound moving forward for not only young farmers but generational farmers?
Well, as one of the things we know about commodities markets is they're cyclical, and it's about supply and demand, and at some point this will turn around. In fact, for example, cattle, we've already seen an improvement in prices. So we know this will turn around. What we need to do is be able to take advantage of that when it happens. That we've got to pass property tax relief, we've got to continue to focus on how we can have more value-added agriculture here in our state, so that creates overall economic prosperity and jobs. And then ultimately, again, finding new marketplaces to help support those commodity prices through international trade. It's one of the reasons, for example, I went to Canada last year. I've been to China twice, Japan twice, the European Union. We have to open up markets around the world to be able to sell our products that will help us support those commodity prices, and to be able to take advantage of that when this all turns around. That will really help us kickstart the growth.
All righty, Governor. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Kellen.
Thank you.